Keir Starmer has been schooled by a literal schoolboy. This is going to sound like I'm having a go for the sake of it, and I promise you I'm not. This was an event that happened yesterday, and it's so important that we talk about these things because when Keir Starmer turns up to do a talk on this proposed ban for social media for under 16-year-olds, we have a 17-year-old making a very valid point in the form of a question. So this is what happened there, and in this video, a few things that we absolutely need to draw attention to, which is absolutely the point about these proposed ban for social media. We all know that really it's about controlling free speech and so on, and why free speech is so important, why they're trying to attack it, how they're trying to attack it, and a few of those things in this video. But first of all, let's take a look at this, because this was yesterday. Keir Starmer was doing this talk on, I presume the talk was on the proposed ban for social media for under 16s. Now, this very astute young gentleman called George said, "I want to ask about the representation of the people bill, which is being put before Parliament, and how giving 16 and 17-year-olds the vote risks being incompatible with the social media ban for under 16s. Now, as I said, this is absolutely on point, a very relevant question. How can you expect 16 and 17-year-olds to be in the correct position with all the relevant information that they need to make an informed vote without having access to social media? Now, banning it is obviously going to severely curtail their access to vast amounts of the news. So I'll come back to that a little bit more in a minute. Now, interestingly, 14 and 15-year-olds can be registered as attainers, which means they are ready and on the system to vote when they can vote. Now, when you're 16, you can vote in local elections, but to vote in a parliamentary election, you need to be 18. Now, the very important point is, which Keir Starmer and the rest of his government seem to miss, is that if you banned social media for anyone under the age of 16, I mean, aside from the fact as to, how would it actually work and would it actually work? Aside from those questions, it raises the very serious issue that anyone under 16 would probably not have adequate access to the news in order to make an informed choice as to which party they would want to vote for. So George asked what the government would do to teach pupils about citizenship and explain that the majority of young people get their views from social media. And I think that is absolutely right. And I would like to think that in some small part, I've helped people to understand law with the hundreds of millions of views that my channel has received over the last 5 years, sort of demystifying law in some sense, I hope. And I learned yesterday that I was ranked #1 by Favicon for a legal influencer, which I didn't even know until yesterday. So thank you very much for doing that. So I'd like to think that I've played some small part in that. And that is indeed how young people are going to learn these things. This is social media. This is the media. George said that he was a bit of an anomaly when he watched the news at 10 whilst most of his friends consume their news on TikTok. Now, I'm on TikTok as well. I've got 200 and something thousand followers there as well. I'm probably going to do more of my sort of personal interaction stuff on Instagram. So I am there as well on BlackBeltBarrister on Instagram. So pop there and follow me there if you want to see more behind the scenes and more sort of personal responses from me. I'll do that on Instagram. I'm going to try that there. And banning all of that would cut off access to all sorts of information, including that from young people, if that's where they want to get their news from. Keir Starmer replied and said that he was a big advocate of votes at 16 and 17 and that Labour had broadened the curriculum in schools because he thinks children and young people ought to learn about citizenship and how we operate the society more generally. But for a few reasons I'll tell you in a minute, how can that possibly be the case if they are cut off from social media and cut off from much of the news? Keir Starmer went on to say, we must make sure we're not cutting off sensible and good access for young people. What I think he really means is access to the stuff that he wants people to see. I'll give you a few examples of that, because this one here, posted here by Katie Lamb, who says, in January, an asylum seeker admitted to sexually assaulting a hospital worker whilst getting taxpayer-funded healthcare. It barely got any coverage. And this is, just one report here. It was certainly not mainstream. Most people would not have heard of it. And but for social media and but for being in that area, you wouldn't have come across this news at all. And much like the courts desk archives, which were reporting on lots of stuff like this, they are now ordering that to be deleted. So there'll be even less reporting on it than there was before. And also things like this, discussions on things like this, where they are saying now, and this is now bleeding into the free speech argument, where, as posted here by Darren Grimes, the terrorist ideology now includes what they are calling cultural nationalism, where people say that Western culture is under threat from mass migration and a lack of integration by certain ethnic and cultural groups, which one may argue is absolutely correct, at least in certain parts of the country. There is a lack. I mean, I don't think anyone can really justifiably argue that in certain parts of the country and certain pockets of areas, at the very least, there is a lack of integration by certain ethnic and cultural groups. That is not a racist thing to say. That is just a fact. There are certain groups that just do not integrate. I would like to think that the vast majority do, and that we encourage everybody to do that, and so on and so forth. But if anyone were to say that, or believe that Western culture is under any kind of threat from mass migration, then that is now chalked up to be a extreme ideology, a terrorist ideology. But again, many of these things they would just not know about, not hear about, not be able to discuss unless they hear it on social media. Because where else is it going to get discussed? It's just on a website somewhere, and unless they find it, unless it pops up, they won't see it. And unless they actively go to a news website, which most children are not going to do, they are going to want to get it through social media. And then we get stories like this, which many people may not come across unless it's on social media, where the prisons minister wants to refer to prisoners not as offenders, but as colleagues, which is a little bit bizarre. I don't really see the logic behind that. I mean, they are prisoners, they are offenders, they are in a prison because they are offenders, but he wants to refer to them as colleagues. Now, this has obviously sparked quite the debate back and forth. They don't want to use the term residents or service users or clients for various obvious reasons, but he wants to refer to them as colleagues. Now, debate that in the comments as to whether you think that's a good idea or not. But then on sticking with free speech, we've got this case here, which is in court today, where we've got Hamid Kostkan, who was originally convicted of a racially aggravated public order offence because he burnt his own Quran, which I don't agree with, by the way. I don't agree with burning religious books, but that doesn't make it an offence. Just because I don't agree with it, and many people might not agree with it, doesn't make it a criminal offence. And it shouldn't be. It isn't, in fact. Per se, it is not, because we don't have a blasphemy law, and burning your own property is not arson. It's not a criminal offence unless it puts lives in danger and puts lives at risk, which that didn't. Then that should not be an offence, and that is what the court found on appeal. But the CPS seem absolutely relentless in pursuing him to push this through as an offence, but their argument is so far-fetched in my respectful view. They are trying to say, and I'm a little bit disappointed, I have to say, I am disappointed that the CPS are pushing so hard on this point. And again, something that they might not know about but for social media. But the CPS are pushing so hard on this point. Their argument is as follows. Because he was burning this Quran, someone else might get so upset that they would get violent against him and attack him. And in that case, the guy that threatened to kill him went off and got a knife and came back and started attacking him. He escaped prison because he had various mitigating circumstances and so on. But he was the one who came back and violently attacked him. But the CPS are trying to argue that because someone else might do that, this act should be criminalised. And I don't agree with that. I think that is wrong. I think the court will say that that is not the case, that it should not be criminalised, because we shouldn't be criminalise the person A's actions because person B cannot control their actions. We cannot say person A is a criminal because person B comes out with a knife to attack them for doing whatever they were doing. That just doesn't make common logic sense to me. And if it does, then I'm disappointed, because then I think we'll have a blasphemy law by the back door. And if that is overturned today, and if that is made an offence today, I will be disappointed. Not that I support the burning of a religious text, I don't. You could have a whole group of people all say they don't support it, but they should all find the person not guilty, because that in and of itself is not an offence, and it should not be an offence. So follow that one along. I will link that in the description below. Let me know what you think about any of this below. But as I said, Keir Starmer has been schooled literally by a schoolboy here who asked him the question, how can you possibly have 16 and 17-year-olds getting the vote when they've no idea what's going on because he's banned social media? And in my view, the real reason is they want to control free speech. They want to control the media. And that starts to sound a lot like North Korea. And we are not North Korea. We should not be controlling free speech, the internet, and social media platforms, much less those that are overseas and available in the UK. That is just ridiculous. Let me know what you think, and thank you for watching.